What's up, gang? How's it going? IU fans, look, lots happening. Lots happening here in the football world, rocking and rolling. Um, it was a little nervy.
Yeah.
It was a little intense.
Yeah. Yeah.
You felt alive, baby. Felt alive watching that game. Of course, Indiana knocked off Michigan 20-15, and now the Hoosiers are 10-0. No one in the history of the universe could have ever staked that claim until Saturday evening. Indiana's 10-0. Matt and I are going to discuss Michigan, talk about CFP, talk about Big Ten, the title race. Where's Indiana as far as that thing is stacking up? How big was this victory over Michigan? Are we more nervous? Do we feel better about this team? We're going to discuss all
Right.
of that and so much more here on episode 338 of the Hoosier Sound, or the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. I'm your host, Anthony Christian. Here with me is my normal co host, Matt Lukens. Matt, we are both now on the other side of the world, but we're staying very, very close to this Indiana Hoosier football team. 20-15. Weird game. Indiana looked like they were going to do what they normally did
Right.
after about a quarter and a half, but then they got in stuck in the mud against Michigan. What are your initial takeaways from this win?
I mean, they tried to give me a heart attack. That's my initial thoughts. I really thought they were about to blow the whole season. Really against a Michigan team that I had spent all week saying that they were just terrible and the easiest opponent ever. So I was about to eat major, major crow. So thank absolute God above that they pulled that out. I will say this. The offense played its worst game by far of the season. It is not close. Curtis Rourke in the second half looked like he was afraid of his own shadow. Um, he really couldn't throw the ball more than 1 yard down the field without it fluttering or him overthrowing it or just throwing it behind. He just could. He was not accurate. The most accurate quarterback I've seen in an IU jersey, and I'm saying that with my chest because I think he's better, more accurate than Sudfeld was. The
Oh,
most
sure.
accurate quarterback I had seen in my tenure as an IU fan, um, looked like Richard Lago.
Yeah.
And I mean, utmost respect to Richard Lago because that guy had an arm and a half. But
He didn't
my
deserve this.
God, if you gave him half a barn to throw at, he would hit somewhere in the next county. So, um,
The other cornfield, yeah.
yeah, well, you know what's going to happen here is this is what's going to happen. I just said that.
That the
This
John
is
Deere.
this
Yeah.
is this is throwing back. This is throwing back to when Justin Smith absolutely ethered me on
Oh
Twitter, and
no.
he found me talking
Oh
about him.
god.
So shout out my guy Justin Smith, love him. Anyways, Kelly graduate, good
Sure.
guy.
Sure.
Um,
Chicagoland,
but
yeah.
Richard Lago, if you listen to this,
No.
I do apologize.
Why? Why you gotta be toxic, man? Why you gotta call why you gotta shoot? Why you gotta shots fire people?
You know what? You know what? That's fine. You know what? Richard Lago was a good QB. You know who wasn't a good QB and beat IU twice? John O'Corn. John O'Corn was terrible. And so, we could say,
That's fair. That's a good point.
in the second half,
That's legit.
Curtis
Legit.
Pork,
Yeah.
Curtis the Piggy Pork, looked
Oof.
more like John O'Corn in the second half, which was a surprise, to say the least. But the defense stepped up. Special teams, Keyshawn Williams, special teams,
Yeah.
special plays,
Yeah.
special players.
Yeah.
They absolutely. I mean, James Evans as well. I mean, he had one really
Muchich.
really bad punt. He had one really really bad punt, and other than that, I mean, all of his punts were pretty good. Had good length and didn't really didn't really mess anything up. So I I'm not mad at the performance. I'm happy we survived, and good teams win bad games. That's what happens. Good teams survive these kind of things. Elite teams don't have these things happen. And I have not once this year, even for a second, thought that IU is like the cream of the crop of college football.
Oh no, man.
But
Come
they're
on.
but they're damn close. They're damn close, and I
Big.
need some people to give them the respect that they deserve. We'll talk about Ohio State next week. I really
Yeah.
think
Right.
For just the national perspective on IU football, they need to keep that Ohio State game close. And I know that is asking for the team to move a mountain over the moon. I understand that. It's a monumental task. This is a very good Ohio State team with 5 stars basically at every freaking position on the field. I get it. But you know what? We have a better coach.
Yeah.
We have a better system.
Quarterback.
We definitely have a better QB, but we also might just have better coordinators, and that includes an Ohio State team that has
Yeah.
Chip Kelly
Yeah.
on the sidelines over there. So I'm not really worried about us keeping it close, but we need to. Like it's not an if, it's a have to. That's
Yeah.
not a maybe, but I have to. Not an if, maybe have to. Have
Sure,
to.
sure.
Have to.
All fair, totally fair. Of course, though, look, yeah, I mean, cream of the crop. To me, I think Indiana's there. I mean, Oregon had a weird game against Idaho, right? I mean, can't rule that out. Ohio State had a weird game against Nebraska. Can't rule that out. Indiana had a weird game against Michigan, and look, they had a injury middle of the game with Miles Price, and an injury before the game with Drew Evans and the new offensive line for the first time all season. Oh, I think they're right there. And when you're sitting here and telling me this is a team that's not 10-0 for the first time ever, shout out to the whole thing. You beat Michigan for the second time since 1987. And I'll be honest, I feel better about this team now than I did last week. And I
Why?
know that's hard for some people to grasp because only won by 5. I feel better about this team. They slayed some demons on Saturday.
Mhm.
It was the
Yeah, they did.
players, it was the
Yeah.
fan base, it was some of the
Yeah, I was about
alumni.
to
It was,
say they slayed my demons because watching that game, I bit
I don't
literally
care.
through one of my nails.
I don't care how much you beat UCLA by or Washington by Nebraska. Michigan's the blue blood. And there are 4 programs, if you ask me, they're on the top tier of college football as things stand today. And it's Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State.
Yep.
Everyone else, I think those 4 teams check the box, every box as it relates to pedigree, as it relates to
Yeah.
tradition, success, resources,
Recent success.
all of it,
Yeah.
all of it.
Yeah.
NFL talent, 5-star talent, transfer talent, like all of it. And Michigan played better than they played all season on Saturday, regardless of the opponent.
Yeah.
They played better than they did against Minnesota or Michigan State or Oregon or anyone else, regardless of the
You know
opponent.
what? You know what? I agree with that statement, and there's a bit not to totally interrupt what you're saying and hijacking, but I think people are missing the actual context. Michigan's been playing pretty decently in the last couple weeks. They have been. They gave Oregon a game for like
Yes,
a solid couple
yes,
quarters. Like this is not some pushover Michigan team that was, they were a pushover Michigan team, you know, a month and a half ago. But slowly as the season's gone on, they've gotten better. They're still not good. Don't get me wrong. IU, if they play their A game, wins that game by
yes,
30. All
sure,
right. It is
sure.
not close. But they're not as bad as the team that lost to Minnesota. Or almost
No,
lost. Did they lose
yeah,
to
it beat
Minnesota?
them, but they
Yeah, they lost to
lost to
Minnesota.
Washington. They lost to Illinois. They're
Right,
a
right. They're not the team that
drastically
lost to
better.
Washington. They're not the team that lost to Illinois. They're not the team that almost lost to Minnesota.
Uh-uh.
Right? Like this
They
is
played
not
all
that
right.
team.
They played all right. And Donovan Edwards and
Yeah.
Khalil Mullings are progressing. And
Are good. Yeah.
that tight end Loveland, he's going to be in the first round. The 2 defensive linemen are all first team Big Ten, possibly if not probably
They
first
have
team All America.
what are they? They have 3 defensive linemen they're looking at going first
I
round,
mean, I
two,
think
two and a
2 for
half.
sure with Graham and Grant.
Yeah.
Um, all I know
I
is
I thought one of their edges might be going. I know Will Johnson's going, but he didn't
very
play.
much in
So
play. I mean, they were in the backfield consistently, especially because of the injury to Drew Evans, and the ball knowers won't cite this. Um, the 2 offensive players Indiana could have almost least likely afford to get hurt were a guard and a slot receiver going into
and
the
QB.
Michigan game. Of course, the QB's
And
got
Q.
to be
Yeah.
there. You're absolutely right. So outside of the quarterback,
Yeah.
if you're talking about positions where an injury really crushes your chances against Michigan, It
They
is a
both
guard
happened in the same
and
game.
it's a slot receiver because the
Yeah.
guards go up against Grant and Graham, pick up the blitzes that Wink Martindale throws at him, and then on the other hand, you've got the slot receiver going up against I think the weakness in Michigan's defense, which is the slot corner position. So Miles
Yeah.
Price as a slot receiver, you saw how productive he was in the first 8, 10, 12 minutes of that game.
Yeah.
Punt return, I believe, as well. And then he goes down, and you're just like, whoa. You can see how Indiana's offense really hit the skids without his availability, his pre-snap motion, his explosiveness, his reliability over the middle. Keyshawn Williams came in though. And this is what's great about this team. Why do I feel better about this team? Because Michigan dragged you into the mud. They got you into a rock fight. They played the type of game that they had to play in order to win. And you won because guys like Keyshawn Williams stepped up and Nico Radicic stepped up as the kicker. And Curtis Rourke made a couple of key throws. The offensive line, of course, Tyler Stevens, you do have to tip your cap to him. He did what he had to do up front. He hung in there. He really did. And he sprung a couple of big plays on one of Indiana's first couple touchdown one of Indiana's touchdown drives. He was a key factor in springing a screen pass and creating some running lanes up the middle. This is how Kurt Signetti has gotten this team into the top five in the country. It's
Yeah.
because complementary pieces, when they're called on, step up. Remember when Jalen Walker went down against Northwestern? Isaiah Jones, right there, ready to go. In this game, you got calls that went against your way. It was a perfect storm. Jameer Johnson kicked out for targeting. Michigan was playing a good game. Their kicker bombed one in from 56 yards.
Yeah.
Their quarterback fumbled the football, pulled Terry Jones down, didn't get called for a penalty, and Michigan recovered.
That was the
The
most
in
BS thing I've ever seen in my life, by the way. I had some Michigan fans try to tell me that they shouldn't have been called holding because the ball was in play. Like that's obviously when
look,
you call holding the most is you
regardless,
can't do that in
regardless of
basketball.
I mean, but again, like even if they call a penalty, Michigan gets the ball, right? Even if they call a penalty, Michigan gets the ball. They didn't even call a penalty. Of course, Elijah Surratt drops a couple passes that he normally catches, but you overcame all of that. That's why this team's a top five team in the country. And Matt, I don't know if I'm crazy, but I feel better about this team now after winning a struggle, arm wrestling tussle for 3.5 hours against Michigan than I would have if they had won this game by 30 or compared to the other games where they won by 40.
Yeah. I mean, you're right about Surratt. Surratt had a couple drops. His clutch factor, I'm starting to question a little bit because in some of the bigger games we've had, he's dropped some. It's like he calls himself Waffle House. Well, Waffle House put extra butter on the waffles
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
because
whoa,
those things
whoa,
were
whoa.
slipping out of his hands. No, he can if he wants to use this as a soundboard. I mean, show me you ain't got that butter in Columbus, because we're gonna need him to make some big plays in Columbus
Yeah,
for
very true,
IU
very
to
true.
win that game. Um, but
And don't forget, like
yeah, I mean, I
Omar Cooper
echo
did right, and then and
Mark
then and
Cooper
then
did. Yep,
Keyshawn Williams. Like this is what I'm saying. This is how this team rolls.
they do. They do. They're deep. They're talented, and they rely on each other. By the way, shout out Stevens, the guard. Shout out because you talk about
Absolutely.
the worst possible matchup to have a guard out. It's against the team that has two future
That's what
NFL
I'm
defensive
saying.
interior linemen. You cannot they will not play another defensive line this season. This season, they will not play another defensive line this season that has anywhere near the interior talent that Michigan has, right? It's not going to be close. It's not going to be close. And so to survive the onslaught of this game will do wonders for him in his development, right? Because again, it won't get harder than that. It can't get harder
No,
than
I
that.
mean,
I mean,
I'll say
Ohio State's
Ohio
got
State. They
talented
had
guys, but
one or two great individuals. Same with Oregon with Derek Harmon, for example. But
yeah, but two,
overall,
they have two. They have two, and one of them's what? They're both going to be top 10 picks, or somewhere in the 10 to
I would think
15
so. If the
range.
draft was tomorrow, I agree. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean they're going to test well at the draft too, so they might even move up. So, uh, I I echo everything you said about the game. I also thank goodness gracious God above for the bye week this week. One, for my own personal sanity, because I've been the games here, the IU games are on Saturday night, Sunday morning. I work Saturday and Sunday. So I have to do like a 12-hour work day on Saturday and then get up to watch the game at 3:30 in the morning, then go in at 9 o'clock. Like it's disgusting. So thank God I get a week off of doing that. And then also we get to get Miles Price healthy. We
Yeah,
get to
big
get
time.
everybody else. I mean, Rourke gets to go back to 100%. He's still
Yep.
dealing with a finger
Yeah.
injury. It just could not have come at a better
Ellison was a little
time.
dinged up during the game.
Yeah.
Of course, now you'll get some time for Tyler Stevens to breathe a little bit before he
Yeah.
sort of becomes more of a full time piece. Yeah, never mind some of the give Elijah Surratt a second to sort of regather himself. Jameer Johnson, number 9. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he'll sort of get a chance to. Fortunately, the penalty happened in the first half, so he doesn't miss the first half of the Ohio State game. But again, this is if this was a rock fight against Nebraska or Washington or UCLA, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same, right? It's just since it's
No.
Michigan and they got first
Yeah.
round talent and they've got a team that's sort of believing in themselves a little bit more now, and they were the underdog against Indiana. You could tell that made a difference to those Michigan players. Right? You could tell they sort of played a little bit more loosely, and they had a chance to do a little bit extra damage. And Indiana fought through it. They hung in there, and Kurt Signetti will admit the team didn't play great. He admitted to
No.
that. He knows as much.
No.
Guess
Yeah.
what? He's the happiest guy in the world right now. Sig's the happiest guy in the world right now. Team's 10-0. Team's number 5 in the
Good
country,
teams.
but he's got 2 weeks to rip a new one into his 2D. There are so many
Good
mistakes.
good teams win bad games. It's the first bad game I was played all
Look at
season.
the four. Look
Even
at
we
the
had a
four teams
backup
above
QB.
Indiana.
We had a backup QB for the Washington game, and we still played better in that
Yeah,
game against Washington, by the way, a team that Michigan struggled against. Better than Washington than we did in this game. That's all I'm saying. Also, losing your starting left guard, what, minutes before the game, or it's probably not minutes. They just didn't
but at
disclose
least,
it.
yeah.
But like either the week of the Michigan game is terrible. That's
Mm.
so hard to game plan with as an offense. Because you have the continuity of the offensive line, and to instantly lose one of your interior linemen against the team again, I'll say it. I'm gonna kill. I'm killing a dead bird right now, but I'm beating you over the head with a
I
stick.
think it's a dead
But
horse.
dead horse. Yeah, so I mixed up two birds with one stone, and dead horse. That's where it went
And
wrong in my brain.
wow.
Well, it's been a long day. I worked today, guys. I'm sorry. No, so yeah. You know,
Yeah, I mean, look,
I go ahead, go ahead,
the
go ahead.
teams above Indiana have all had games just like this. Let's not kid ourselves. You want to talk about Oregon? Look at Oregon's game by game. They had a weird game like this against Idaho, against Boise State. They weren't all that great against Maryland in the first half before pulling away.
Right.
This is how it is. And you know what? Now it's up to Signetti to make the adjustments, to correct the mistakes, and make sure that the team is better now going into the Ohio State game in a couple of weeks. So much more to discuss here. But yeah, I mean, just shout out to the whole team, the complementary pieces. I think that's my main takeaway between Keyshawn Williams coming in and going, let's roll, baby. I'm ready to go. Omar Cooper, great touchdown catch to get things going. Plenty of key players defensively, like CJ West, Mikhail Kamara, of course. We know that
Mm,
they're starter level players on this team, but D'Angelo Pons picks it up after Jameer Johnson goes down. We've seen the growth and development of Terry Jones Jr., Jalen Walker, a couple of key plays in there. Sean Asbury, of course, doing big things. This is how championship teams get to January. It's by having numerous players, even if it's spontaneous, the snap of a finger, come in and contribute. And that's what you're seeing Indiana do there. Now, Matt, Indiana, as of Tuesday night in the US, is number 5 in the country. We saw the AP poll give Indiana the 5th spot in the land. And then the committee, the CFP committee, announced in between those two basketball games that the Hoosiers
Great basketball games.
are the number 5 team in the country. Uncharted territory in the CFP era. So you tip your cap to this team. Good job, everybody. I'm furious.
Why? Why? Why are you mad?
I'm livid. Now, I'm not saying Indiana should be 1. I'm not saying Indiana should be 2. But I am saying Indiana sure as hell should have been 4. And I know you're
Yeah,
going
we
to look
probably
at
should
it
be
and
above Penn
say,
State.
I know you're
Yeah.
going to look at it and say, well, come on, you're being real nitpicky, idiot. I think this is setting a very dangerous precedent. I think it's setting a very dangerous situation for what happens in the event that Indiana drops that game at Ohio State. Because you're telling me right now, Penn State has the better resume? Okay. They already lost to Ohio State without beating anyone, and they're still coming in higher than Indiana. If Indiana loses that game, I'm not saying Indiana's going to drop 8 spots. But what I am saying is if Indiana loses the game to Ohio State, I still like IU's overall resume this season compared to Penn State's. And that's not going to happen. Penn State will host the game at 11-1. Indiana will probably have to go to Knoxville or to South Bend or somewhere in a CFP game. I don't think Indiana will get knocked out of the playoff. But I do think IU's road to a national championship is going to get extremely difficult with a loss to Ohio State. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it is anywhere close to appropriate that Penn State is ranked 4 right now. And if you want to sit here and say brand bias, this brand bias, that, what are you protecting with Penn State? If you want to brand bias your way into Texas or Georgia or Michigan or Ohio State or Alabama, fine. Those are brands I understand you want to have bias towards. To me, Penn State is the Arkansas of the Big Ten. You got nice crowds. You win a few games. No one takes you seriously as a playoff contender. No one takes you seriously as a title contender. What have you accomplished in the last 25 years besides some nasty stuff off the field? Why are we protecting Penn State? I don't get it. I don't know. Indiana should be 4. And I know you're like, it's a 5 versus 4 thing. But this to me sets a dangerous situation in the event Indiana loses to Ohio State. If I'm wrong, let me know. But I'm livid that Indiana is not the number 4 team in the country in the CFP rankings. Forget the AP poll, the CFP rankings.
I think a lot like the selection committee in college basketball, college football selection committee is giving a lot of weight to teams who have played other Power 4 or 5 conference teams in the non-conference. For instance, not knocking IU's schedule, and I'm not saying West Virginia is a good
I mean,
team.
come on.
I'm not saying they're a good team. I'm not saying it. I'm looking at it from the perspective of the committee. I don't agree either. Okay. I'll just put that out there. But I'm saying what I'm looking at is if you look at the rankings, they are ranking the teams that have beaten other Power 4 conference teams in the non-conference higher than they are putting people who played cupcakes in the non-conference like we did, which I don't have any problem with ever, by the way. We should play
Yeah, who's
three
Ohio
cupcakes
State
every
played?
single year. We should play, but Ohio State did go play Oregon, and then they've also beaten everybody else in their schedule and beat Penn State. So, again, whatever. And you have to, with these polls, especially, the preseason rankings have a lot to do with where you're ranked. And IU was nowhere near the rankings to start the year. In fact, we were polled to be 17th in the Big Ten or something like that, something crazy. And now we're tied for
Where the
first with 2
committee
games
has
left.
to step up, right? That to me is where the committee has to step up. And again, these aren't the final rankings, and I get that. I understand. These aren't final. But this to me is where the committee can actually separate themselves from the AP poll and show their level, their IQ is a little bit higher than the numbskulls that vote in the AP poll.
I mean, I agree with you, but we've seen what Penn State looks like when they play an elite Ohio State team. We've seen Ohio State and what they look like when they play two elite teams, or in in the
Yeah,
committee's
I mean,
mind,
I'm not
two elite teams.
complaining about Ohio State, to be fair, but
IU will I will guarantee you this. If IU loses in Columbus by the same or less than Penn State, you might not see them drop at all for a loss, which I know might be insane to hear by some people,
I didn't see
but
that coming.
to go on the road in Columbus and to lose by less than two scores to that Ohio State team in the horseshoe, and if that game is just as, but remember, the Ohio State Penn State game was freaking close for 3.5 quarters until
Sure.
Ohio State clutched up at the end. If Indiana can keep it close for 3.5 quarters, and let's just say Ohio State's for some inexplicable reason pulls away and beats our Hoosiers, um, I expect Indiana to not fall at all in the polls. Now, I will preface this: they will not fall past 5 or 6 depending on where they're at. If they're top 4 or top 3, like let's say Penn State for some
Yeah,
inexplicable reason loses, and let's say
which would be
um
hilarious.
who else is in the top 5 right now? I'm trying to
Texas,
remember this.
Ohio State, Oregon.
Let's say Texas loses to A&M or something like that, right?
Yep.
And IU somehow top 3, right? They're gonna fall out the top 4, maybe out the top 5, but I don't think they fall farther than 6 with a less than 2 score loss in Columbus. Because again, they're gonna bake in the fact that you're playing in the horseshoe. That's a 7 point swing right there. So you lose by,
For
if you
sure.
lose by less than 2 scores, you're losing by less than a touchdown in Columbus. Like I really think the committee will bake that in there. I know some people are afraid of the brand bias, and I get you, but I also America loves a freaking Cinderella
Underdog, right?
story,
That's what I'm
and they love
thinking.
an underdog. They love an underdog, and they would love, absolutely
This
love
team.
to have a game in, like what your background is,
Yeah,
in Memorial
that's
Stadium
right.
in December. That
Let's
atmosphere
go.
would be elite. The coverage of that game, Indiana not only going to the playoff for the first time in the history of school, not only winning 10 games, but hosting in the first round of they would make space for Indiana. And that's my same point with Penn State, is that the reason why Penn State is ranked so high isn't because of whatever. One, it's because they played somebody in the non-conference, and two, it's because, let's be honest, Beaver Stadium is one of the best places to watch a football game in all of football, not just college, but in the NFL as well. And you don't think Penn State's going to have some sort of special environment plan for a home playoff game? You've got to be kidding yourself. So, I mean, they're looking at venues just as much as they are looking at how good these teams are playing, because again, they got to sell tickets, they got to sell TV deals, they got to pitch, they got to market this as like, look at what these home games are like in the playoff. Look at what you guys could bid on in another 4 or 5 years down the line when the playoff rights are up. So, again, I wouldn't see any reason why, even though, Memorial Stadium only sits like what, 56,000 or whatever it is.
Sig
Um,
wants 80 soon.
Sig wants 80 soon. I want 80 soon. I was arguing with some people. I wasn't arguing. We're having a friendly conversation on Twitter about how they need to upgrade the Rock, which they were talking about. Oh, they're going to expand the away sideline, which is like true, but that'll add maybe 10,000 seats. Like if you want to add 30, like you got to move the scoreboard. You got to put stands on top of where the scoreboard is on around the arena. It's got to be bigger on both sides. And
Underground.
heck,
Yeah,
you
you gotta go
might have
under.
to add an upper deck on one
Yeah.
side, which I
Wow.
think would be really cool. Which I
Wow.
think
Let's
would
not
also
get too
be
serious.
I think would be, one, really cool, and two, I think it would be very ceremonious to me if you built an upper deck, because then you couldn't see Assembly Hall from inside of Memorial Stadium, and I think that's something that the football program really needs to get off its back, seriously, as not even just a metaphor, but just as like a physical representation of what Indiana football is to Indiana basketball. They're two separate things now, straight up. And we're gonna talk about basketball here in a minute.
Yep.
I
Go
don't
for it.
got very glowing things to say about basketball right
Oh
now.
dear. Oh boy.
I am not in the camp of I mean, I'm in the camp of trust Woody, but I'm not in the camp of everything
Yeah.
is nice and rosy and colored butterflies and rainbows and peace offerings over there in Assembly Hall. But in as far as football goes, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
in La La Land.
I
I'm
mean,
Emma
yeah.
Stone in La La Land.
Even after a 5 point win over Michigan, which I think might give some people some pause, but overall, I'm sitting here saying, God bless this football team and whatever happened that afternoon on Saturday. Fight through it, overcome an in-game
If
injury to Miles Price, pre-game injury to Drew Evans, fight through some stuff against a top four brand. I love
if this game is giving you pause, by the way, one,
it. Rethink life.
find
Yeah.
God. Find God. Two, you don't know ball. So that's it. If this game is giving you pause, like go find a rock and hide under it. Thanks.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, completely agree with your take on that. We're going to talk more football here in just a minute, but first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU Sports. We always like to zoom out, look around, see what's going on in the world of Hoosier Nation. How about a record crowd at Wilkinson Hall for the volleyball team? That was exciting to see video of, even though IU dropped that match on at Wilkinson Hall. But compared to where they used to play when I was an undergrad, Wilkinson Hall's a real gem compared to
Uh,
the
you mean
previous
when they played in the high
facilities.
school gym that was off campus?
And
Yeah.
so I'm not gonna throw any more shade there. Wilkinson Hall's awesome. Definitely recommend going and seeing an event there. Wrestling, volleyball, you name it. Khalil Ware, NBA debut. Great to see.
Yeah.
Knocking down a couple shots here and there. We'll see how he fits into Miami's rotation
Go
as the
Heat.
rest of the season goes on. And then Matt, Indiana, starting their season 2-0 on the men's side. We got the results. I believe they covered
Hmm.
against Eastern, did not against Edwardsville. I'll hand the ball off to you here. Floor is yours. What were your reactions to Indiana's first two wins this year?
Losing at half to Eastern Illinois. I do not care how hungover you are from the football game because let's be honest, we know this team, right? We know they were at the football game. They all took pictures at the
You got
Michigan
a,
game.
you got a few
So they
vets
were
on that
there.
team. Got a few vets, right?
Yeah,
Over yeah,
yeah,
21,
a
21
few
plus.
a few vets, and also Kilroy's does Kilroy's? No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna insinuate
No,
anything that
yeah,
get people in trouble. But I'm just saying basketball players live by different rules in Bloomington. So, anyways, uh, yeah, the team likes to have fun. And I don't think it's any surprise that I had some insider sources saying that a few of the guys were having fun Saturday night. So again,
yeah.
it looked like they had been having fun on Saturday night because they came out about as slow as humanly possible. They played that first half with the effort of a retired, slightly depressed, overweight Kentucky football fan. Okay?
Oh, ah, ah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like most of the people from Kentucky.
Uh,
Um
Great
Yeah,
win
it
for
was
the
not good.
Tigers.
It wasn't pretty. The basketball program is good. They
Yeah,
made the right hire, I
right,
think.
right.
Anyways, that's they looked good last night. They looked really, really, really good. Which,
Bleh,
anyways,
bleh,
Kentucky's
bleh.
good.
It was against Duke
Um,
though, so it's not that.
I
Not
know.
bad.
I tweeted. I was like, can both these teams lose? I guess it's possible, but just like it ends in a draw, and they both like don't get any value from the game, um, because frick both those schools. No, the effort was entirely. I mean, it's not
Mackenzie and
acceptable.
Bako, not bad, right? Step
But
forward.
he was doing the thing he did last year, which was he was giving effort on the offensive end and yeah, taking a few breaks on the defensive end. He was the best player. I will say him and Galloway were the best players just in that first
Yeah, six
half of the
man,
game.
six man role fits
Six
perfectly.
man fits him like a glove. But honestly, I think Galloway might actually be the best just starting. I really think that I'd like to see Carlisle. what Carlisle can bring off the bench. Ant and I were talking about that for very briefly. That it might actually do him some good now that he's hit a couple shots to come off the bench. Just have like a defined role, like you're just plug and play offense. Just go. You can have the ball in your hands, like you can give Rice some breaks. Um, let's see. Yeah, the team as a whole, terrible first half against Eastern. I really didn't like how Miles Rice went an entire half without attempting a single shot, um, which was not great. You're the starting guard for Indiana, and you don't attempt a single field goal attempt in the first half. Um, so he's got to be better. And I'm pretty sure he'd be the first one to tell you that he's got to be better. Renew and Balo, there's a clip. I think the Sleepers tweeted it or Ant tweeted it. Um, of it's a baseline. It might have been a baseline out of bounds play, and they just didn't pick up a dude sitting in the near sideline corner, and he just waltzes in and gets a layup, and they both just kind of stare at each other like, "What's going on here?" Um,
Yep, I
he
saw
walks
that.
waltzes baseline. Yeah, it's just
Not great.
not good looks all around. And then they go on what, like a 56-13 run or something like that. They absolutely just blasted them. I don't want to know what was said in the locker room at halftime. Actually, I'd feel better knowing that there wasn't anything said by the coaching staff, and instead the players were like, "What are we doing?" Like
Oh, okay. A
some of
little
these
self
players,
coaching, a little self coaching.
some of these players have been through the Archie era. Right? They were here when we were losing to crap teams, when we were tied at half with teams that we shouldn't be
Yeah.
tied with. They
Well, they were also
like
here
they
last year, weren't they? Some of them.
They were here last year, yes, but the
Harder.
Archie era is worse, right? So again, they've been through the highs and especially the lows of this basketball program. So I'm hoping there's a little bit of accountability from somebody like a Leal, somebody from a Galloway, because
Galloway. Yeah.
to be honest, Renew and Mbako might be our two best players, but I think on any given night they give the least amount of effort on defense. Um, and Balo doesn't look like he's fully fit. You see him having a hard time jogging back and forth, which look, me too, bro. I just ran around with kids for 2 hours tonight. At my job, I'm feeling it. I need to go hit the treadmill or something. So I get it, but I mean, he's a Division I college basketball player getting paid millions to rebound the ball and put up 10 points a game. So I would appreciate it if he did those things. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, I
Well,
mean, anything else off the top of my head? I'm trying to remember.
no,
So because you didn't
nothing
watch it.
else.
No, there's nothing else. There's
I
nothing else.
think
There's nothing
second
else.
half was good to see. I do want to see a little bit more out of Luke Goody. Just sort of a little bit
Yeah.
more of a rhythm, just a little bit more of a rhythm. I think he's going to be a massive X factor for this team the rest of the way. But otherwise, no, I mean, I like just the general dynamic of the guard play. Rice and Carlisle, I know the results aren't really there, but you can tell there's a step up, especially going back to the Tennessee exhibition, just the speed and the quickness and the playmaking and the shooting will come around. But as far as my ball handling guards are concerned, I like that quick, twitchy first step, blow by the defender, get to a spot, give it up, take it to the rim, draw a foul. I
I
think,
mean, with all due
yeah,
respect, you said that Carlisle and Rice are a step up from last year. I think there's 225 teams in college basketball last year that was a step up
but
from Indiana's guard
look,
play, and that's with all due respect to the people that played last year.
sure.
I'm just saying it was not
And now
great.
the rules, I think, fit Galloway and Cups a little bit better. Maybe they earn some more minutes. We'll see. But no, I like where that stands there. With all this said, Ken Palm has us beating South Carolina by 6 over the weekend. I think Indiana wins by double digits. I think they look at some film, they review some things, and take care of business by double figures against South Carolina. Do you see it the same way, or are you a little bit nervous going into this game against the Gamecocks?
Hey, if Coach Sig was coaching this basketball team, I would not be nervous. Um, but you know, this team did, the South Carolina team did lose to UNF. I get it, but UNF's actually pretty decent. They sprung another upset. I'm pretty sure they beat somebody else. I was scratching my
Yeah,
head a
they did.
little
And they
bit.
lost to Georgia, I believe, yesterday or the day
Yeah, and
before.
Georgia's pretty decent. So yeah, I I don't know. I hope that they win by. I hope they cover. They need to cover. That's what I'm saying. They need a good cover because they didn't cover the first game, and they miraculously backdoor covered this last game. So they need to cover this game for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm also sort of hoping, hey, maybe they found something in the second half there that they can really lean into, and hopefully we'll be able to see that carried forward here, going into South Carolina and then Atlantis. Stuff's about to get real, as far as this men's basketball team is concerned. Folks, a reminder: if you'd like to find us, the Hoosier Sound, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. That kind of support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. Yeah, like our stuff, share, retweet it. If you do all that already, tell a friend to do the same thing. We'd like to keep things rolling along right there. Matt, heading back to football here, the Big Ten title race, fascinating to say the least. Of course, Oregon and Indiana, the two undefeateds at the top of the
Yep.
league. Ohio State, Penn State, one back in the loss column. Everyone else, five or worse. I mean, it's pretty incredible that Indiana is going to finish as one of the four best teams in the Big Ten.
Yep.
Locked in. That can't
Locked.
change. Um, as you look ahead, Ohio State, we wrap up with Purdue. What needs to get better for this Indiana team? What needs to improve? Where do they need to tighten some things up? Everything, if you ask me, is on the table this year, whether it's a Big Ten title game appearance, a win in Columbus, victories in the college football playoff, winning the national championship. I think it's all on the
Mm,
table. What needs to get buttoned up
right.
for this team right now?
Well, that's a good question. Um, I honestly think they just need to get healthy. Like I need Rourke back at 100%. They need to figure out the offensive line because they've been pretty good. They had a really shaky game. I mean, they literally couldn't stop a bull rush against Michigan, but I'm not sure if that's the offensive line or if that was the offensive game plan, right? Like was that a problem with what Shanahan was doing with Michigan's blitzing? I'm not totally sure. I'd have to probably watch a little bit more film to kind of check out what was going on there. And then obviously defense, get Jameer Johnson back, get healthy. It just in synopsis, it's get healthy. All around the team, get healthy and plan. I mean, I hope the coaching staff is taking all 2 weeks. I mean, they should have been starting yesterday, the day before. They should start Sunday planning for this Ohio State game. You watching every single drive. I mean, you have 2 weeks to soak in everything Ohio State has done, not just this year, but everything Chip Kelly did with UCLA last year, everything Ohio State with Knowles ran last year, everything Knowles did at Oklahoma State before he came over, everything that Ryan Day has done for the last. Like I hope they have the staff, the film guys locked in a room in Memorial Stadium, and they're force feeding them like shalubis on nonstop you know, and got them on that Shalubi's juice to get them ready for this Ohio State game because we're gonna need, I mean, the best game plan that they've had all year long, and they've had a couple pretty good ones, but they're gonna need the best one against Ohio State if we're gonna have any chance of winning in the horseshoe.
Yeah, completely fair. I think beyond that, I would like to see a little bit more explosiveness, especially on the offensive side of things. I feel like on the defensive half of the field, Indiana does land some explosive plays as far as takeaways, as far as sacks. I think you do see that on defense. I want to see a little bit more big play going into that Ohio State game on Saturday, in a couple Saturdays from now, and then the Purdue game. I want that to be a priority. Obviously, you could just consistently get 5, 6, 7 yards of play against Purdue every play and win that game by 5 touchdowns. But
Mm,
I want to see some explosion against Purdue going into the potential Big Ten title game or the potential CFP bracket tournament play. I want to see some big hitters. I remember Rourke striking one 15, 20 yards down the field to Keyshawn Williams. Of course, the touchdown to Surratt was a big play. I would like a little bit more of them. So that's something I'm paying
yeah.
attention to. hey, could we get a bomb from Radicic? Could we see him try a 50-yarder? Maybe throw it out there in the Purdue game, possibly. I just am curious to see what his range is. That's where I'm sitting as far as Indiana's concerned. They're right there. I mean, they are as buttoned up as any team in the country. There are things they can tweak, things they can revise to
Yep.
improve. But Matt, I think this team can win it all. Like I really do. I
Ah.
really do. I'm not saying I'm predicting it. I'm not saying they're gonna romp through every single CFP game that they play. If they played Oregon tomorrow, I wouldn't be nervous. Indiana would be a 10-point underdog, 7-point underdog. We'd play.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. If they played Ohio State, of course they're going to play Ohio State. It looks like they're going to be a 9-10 point underdog in Columbus. If they played Texas or Penn State, I sure as hell wouldn't be as nervous as I would be for Oregon or Ohio State. I think it's on the table. I think it's
I
on
mean,
the table.
I'm gonna eat some crow, I'm sure at some point during the rest of the season, but I'm really not afraid to play a single SEC team. I think that conference is a freaking joke.
I agree completely.
I watch that conference every weekend while
Can I?
I'm
Can
trying to
I? Can
fall
I? You
asleep.
know what? I'm going to cut you
Yeah,
off.
go ahead.
My hot take of the entire college football universe right now is that the SEC is exactly the same right now in 2024 as the Big 12. And I think each conference has one top tier team. The Big 12 is BYU. I think the top tier team in the SEC is Georgia. And I think everyone else is mid or worse. And everyone wants to paint a broad brush and say these 2-loss, 3-loss SEC teams should all get in. Screw them all. Like I think Boise State should get in as an at-large if they lose their conference title game because Boise State's other loss is a narrow one at Oregon. I think SMU should get strong consideration if they run the table. Well, of course they will if they run the table because they'll be the ACC champs. But I think there are other teams in this mix that that should easily be in the conversation against ahead of some of these other 3-loss SEC teams. I mean, I definitely think Ole Miss and Alabama deserve some credit, Texas as well. But to me, Georgia is the top tier team in the SEC. They've had the schedule gods. They've had the schedule gods angry at them this year. In addition to them going out there and scheduling Clemson, facing Florida on a neutral, I think Georgia's a top tier team, evidenced by them going into Austin winning by 2 scores.
Yep.
Everyone else, I don't care for them. I really don't.
I think Ole Miss is bad. I think Georgia's beatable. I think Ole Miss is bad. I think Texas is bad. I think Texas A&M is bad. I think LSU is bad. I think Mizzou is
Tennessee,
terrible.
you
Like
think Tennessee? I mean,
I think we beat Tennessee by 2 scores. I'm serious. I'm dead serious. I think that Tennessee team is a joke. Really,
mid,
seriously. I think their defense is pretty good, but
so
like
mid.
their offense doesn't blow me out the water on
It's
anything.
mid,
They do, and they have a freshman QB. Like, come on.
mid galore. That's all it is. Um,
Yeah.
I think the top 4 teams in the country are Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, and BYU. I really do.
Yeah. I agree.
I think honestly, Georgia and Boise State are tier 2, and I kind of think everyone else is after that.
I think Boise State's a lot higher than some people are giving them credit because they got them at what? They had them ranked at
Remember,
13.
they went to
The
Oregon and
committee.
lost by 1 score, and then they also
Yep.
beat Washington State by three or
They
four
beat
scores
UNLV as well.
on the
UNLV's
road.
good. Yeah.
That's a
This
better win
Boise
than
State team is
Indiana has right now, to be completely fair.
I this might be crazy and I have some Boise State fans that are friends with me. So they might call me out on this, but I think this might be the best Boise State team they've ever had. And I'm serious as a program. This might be the best one. This is the most
Might
competitive
be.
with I mean
Kellen Moore, shout out Kellen
Oregon's
Moore and Ian
Oregon is
Johnson, but I don't
I
know.
know those teams were awesome, but this Boise State team went to Eugene and lost by 3 points to the very clear number one team in the country.
Yeah,
Like they played them almost as they
And
played
there
them
was a,
just as
if I
close as Ohio
recall off the
State did.
top of my head, there was a really bad call or two against Boise
Yep.
State in that game that
Yep.
really helped Oregon's cause. But I also am going to give credit to Boise State for that UNLV win for beating Washington State by, I think it
Yeah.
was 49-24. Washington State's a top 20 team, and that's Washington State's only
Yeah.
lost this year. I kind of think I think Penn State is mid Tennessee, A&M. And by the way, we said that thing about Texas losing to A&M to bolster Indiana's ranking. Of course, that's not possible because the IU Ohio State game is before Texas plays A&M at the end of the season. But
Sorry.
still,
Sorry.
to your point, I could see A&M winning that game. A&M's not all that good, given that they lost to Notre Dame at home and lost to South Carolina. So, like, I think there's a bunch of mid in that conference, as well as the Big 12. And then I think BYU's the top team in that league, and Georgia's the top team in this league. And Georgia, for all I
I
know, could
think
win it all. But still,
I think Colorado's really good in the Big 12.
that's going to
I
be a
think
wild card. Sure. And same thing for me with
they
Bama, Bama, Ole Miss. I think
Bama can
Colorado's that
figure it
equivalent
out.
in the Big
Yeah.
12.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of all it is. I think it's all it is. And you know what? If they fill up the CFP with SEC teams at 10, 11, and 12, fine. But
That's fine. I hope they put Indiana as a home game. We get to cook one of them at
whatever,
in
baby. Just
Memorial
give
Stadium.
me. Obviously, Indiana gets the bye if they win the Big Ten title game. Give me a 5 or a 6 if Indiana doesn't. You're gonna have a really hard time convincing me that Indiana does not deserve a seed of 6 or higher. A seed of 6 or higher, not a ranking. A
We're gonna be
seed of
11
6 or
and 1
higher in
and
the CFP.
we're gonna be 11 and 1 in a power conference with our only loss being against a
And I don't
top
care even if Indiana loses to Ohio State by
four
21.
team.
I really don't.
I don't care
I hope
either,
it
but
doesn't happen.
I hope for my sanity's sake that doesn't happen.
I fear for Purdue if that's what happens. We're gonna
Oh,
talk
that's gonna be they're gonna drop 70. Oh, it's gonna be
we're
great.
gonna talk about the rest of the league here in just a sec. Make some Big Ten picks of the week. But just a quick social media shout out, folks. If you enjoy our show, again, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. That kind of support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. We like the word of mouth. We like to go ad free on here. Spread the word, share the love. We're gonna be here until the rest of the season, the end of the season, and then basketball, and then baseball, and then we just keep doing it. We keep rolling right along as the Hoosier world keeps turning and turning and turning, including a clean trifecta of undefeated Big Ten title champs as well as college football national champions, which is completely in play as we sit here in mid-November. Matt, as we like to usually do here, on this podcast, let's take a look around the league, maybe zoom out a little bit. We have seven matchups pitting Big Ten teams. Of course, Indiana not featured this upcoming weekend because the Hoosiers are off. But there are a lot of things that are going on in this league. Of course, we talked about the top four race between Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the middle of this league as well. How about UCLA?
Yep.
The team everyone talked about as if Indiana beat, a D2, D3 team, and Indiana went into the Rose Bowl and crushed the living brains out of them. Lo and behold, they're decent. Their bowl eligibility is still in play for them, and their 3 game winning streak. A lot of interesting stuff in Nebraska, of course, trying to win their 6th game. Wisconsin's going to host Oregon. Matt, as you look at the different matchups this week, the point spreads, the over unders, anything stand out to you as far as the Big Ten picks of the week are concerned?
How is USC favored by 9 points against Nebraska? Like, no, all due respect, Nebraska's been terrible for like since Indiana beat the life out of them. Literally, they have not played well
Think,
since that IU game. They have
yeah.
not looked good, but they haven't looked
Well,
that
well,
bad that
they
they're.
they did in Columbus,
That's true. They did put up a fight, and then they
and
wow.
then the wheels
And it's
fell off.
still okay. Outside of playing Ohio State, they haven't looked great. So again, they're going to USC. It's in Los Angeles, sunny, beautiful weather, beautiful women, beautiful people. You know what? Sorry, I went full Brett Nussmeyer
Oh,
there for a second.
oh,
Sorry. Hello. Sorry. Anyways,
Musburger. That's Myers, the
Brent
IT
Musburger.
player.
Sorry, not Nussmeyer. Brent Nussmeyer. Who's Brent Nussmeyer?
I think he took the LSU quarterback and gave him a new
I
first
said
name.
Garrett Nussmeier and Brent Musburger. Can you see where I got that? Anyways,
It
Brent
checks out.
Musburger.
It checks out. It works.
I had to. The opportunity was there. I just had to do it. Anyways, uh, no, they're gonna cover that clearly. They might even just win that outright, but there's no way they lose that game by more than 9 points. It's not happening. I don't trust that USC team. Also, Maryland favorite at home by 6 against Rutgers. There will be 5 people at that football game, maybe. So I don't know how Maryland even has a home field advantage there. And I mean, Rutgers is gonna what bus in? They're not that far away from Maryland's campus. It's like what a 2 hour bus ride from
Yeah,
3 hour
easy
bus ride
trip.
from Rutgers. Easy trip down to Maryland. They're gonna be fine. They're gonna be well rested and ready to play. And then I like Purdue to God. As I've been thinking
What do
I
you like
want I
Purdue to
think
do,
I
Matt? What exactly do you like
cover.
Purdue to do?
Cover 28
Really?
points
Are you
against Penn
sure?
State at home. I do not trust this
I mean,
Penn State offense as far as I can throw them.
what if this was Penn State against Idaho? Like, would you take Idaho to cover 28 and a half?
You know what this game screams to me? No, I agree with that logic. And I'm not really using my full
Like,
brain power here, I don't think. But I really do think that this game ends 28-3. So I would take the under on the
yes,
total
okay, all
points.
right. I just
And I think Penn State gets up 21-0. They're cruising into the fourth quarter. They got Bo Pribula out there playing quarterback. They're running the ball 17 times in a row with Nick Singleton. They're getting about 1.5 to 2 yards a carry. Because Purdue's putting 12 people in the box. They're not even covering Penn State's wide receivers because why would you? Um, and yeah, then they just get a lucky field goal at the end. Purdue actually hits a field goal instead of what they did against Ohio State, which was they couldn't put a field goal in to save their life. Um, and yeah, I genuinely think Purdue covers against Penn State. 28
I
and a
don't know,
half,
man.
28 and a
Bold,
half, so many points against a power
bold.
four opponent. 28 and a half.
I
That's the
honestly,
same. Ohio State's
I'll
favored by
just
28 and a half on the
I'm
road against
I'm
Northwestern.
taking I'm taking the other side of that. I'm sorry. I can't put our listeners in danger
28 and a
of
half is
taking
so
Purdue.
many
There's
points.
not a
It's
spread big enough for this game, if you ask me. Like Penn State, the one thing they actually do well, outside of the trip to Bloomington in 2020, which for some reason people choose to forget, they beat the teams they're supposed to beat.
That's true. But they don't always cover those
You're
games.
right because
They
they
don't
did it against
always
Bowling
cover those
Green. You're right
games.
on that note. But I was impressed with Penn State against Washington. If you gave me Penn State minus 63, I would not take Purdue. Like I am not kidding. So I'm just gonna let this sit at 28 and a half. If you can find a 28, that would be wonderful. I would take that if a 28 is out there. I do. I honestly would also SGP that with the under because, like you said, I don't think Purdue scores, frankly.
Yeah.
So, which I believe has hurt them three
Yeah.
times this year already. So I could see an outcome here of 49-0, 45
Oh,
nothing, and you just kind of roll from there.
I
Otherwise,
just
yeah.
go ahead, go
Well,
ahead.
otherwise, I was
Otherwise
gonna say
what?
the other number that stands out to me here is Illinois -3 against Michigan State with this game in Champaign. I like Illinois more than that. Like I mean, Michigan State is so erratic at quarterback, few other positions. I think they're a good team. I think they're a good team, and I think they'll be really good in a year, maybe a couple years. Illinois, though, is more of a finished product than Michigan State is. I like Illinois -3 at home. Otherwise, nothing else really stands out to me all that much. I like your. I mean, I completely am on board with your thought as far as Nebraska +9. I think they're going to have a good opportunity here to sort of take a deep breath. You get Dana Holgerson on board for some reason. And I actually like kind of what he does
Is
as far
it
as scheming up, drawing up some offense. So
is it
that's what I have.
2014 again? Is it
I,
2015? Dana Holgrensen
you
is like something
know,
to celebrate. Oh, we got
you
Dana
know,
Holgrensen. Is oh
yeah, I actually like the idea of some urgency here on the Nebraska side. Um, you know, we'll see how that goes. I I like Washington to win. I just don't know if they're winning by four or more. That's kind of where I am as
yeah.
far as the UCLA Washington game. I think
I thought
I
Washington's
am
gonna
very
win that
confident
game.
Washington will win. I just don't know if it'll be
Yeah.
by four.
Yeah.
So I think that's all I have. Illinois to cover, Nebraska to cover, Penn State to cover, Washington to win. Matt says, "Shut up." Purdue's gonna hang in there and keep it.
I'm gonna hate saying that, but I genuinely believe that this Penn State team wins like 24-3, 28-3. Like
Anything on Oregon, Wisconsin?
I think Oregon wins that game. I think it could be uncomfortable for the Ducks, though. I think it's gonna be uncomfortable for them. They don't do well. No Big Ten team does well when they travel two time zones over. They don't do well.
Yeah,
And
you know what
they're
though?
doing that trip.
I just checked. It's gonna be 53 and sunny in Madison, Wisconsin on Saturday.
Perfect football weather.
I mean, perfect football weather, especially for
That's about as
Oregon.
good as it gets.
Especially for Oregon. So if
Yeah, that's
anything,
true. Oregon doesn't have to
I
play in the
actually
bitter
might
cold.
lean a little bit more with the Oregon minus 14. If you can find a minus
I
13 and a
mean,
half, I would
but
definitely consider that much more.
the Oregon cold doesn't matter. They used to play in the Pac-12. They used to
I
play
know, but
Utah.
Wisconsin cold is different. I mean,
Utah
you could.
cold is pretty damn
It's pretty
cold.
bad. It's pretty bad. To be fair, I do believe, by the way, that this game for Oregon is the last potential cold weather game for a West Coast team. Next week you have USC UCLA. Oregon hosts Washington at the end of the year, and so overall, that is pretty much all that I see there.
I mean, that's
Um,
good planning from the Big Ten. I mean, the West Coast teams really shouldn't play a cold weather game
it'll be fun.
ever. Like if you're planning as the Big Ten, you're giving those West Coast teams most of their home games towards the
Big
end of the
Ten
season.
title
Just
game in Anchorage. Let's go, Siberia.
I think Anchorage actually has a dome, by the way. So we could play a game in Anchorage. They have a dome. They have a dome. I'm fairly certain they do.
Any final thoughts here, Matt? Wind down Wednesday. Hoosiers 10-0, basketball 2-0. We haven't lost. Well, the women's team, bro. But yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. Women's team's got some kinks to work out, so they gotta figure out who they are as a team because their defense ain't up to snuff. They can shoot the crap out of the ball, but they can't guard a scarecrow. So they got to figure that out. They obviously desperately miss the seniors from last year's team, which I don't think is comes to anybody's surprise. Anyways, yeah, basketball teams off and running. I mean, we talked at for nauseum about IU football, so I won't really bring them up. I just want them to go and take a break and nobody goes dirt bike riding or skateboarding or skydiving or anything of that matter. Just stay healthy. No talking to ex-girlfriends. Don't get your car anywhere near them. All that jazz. Basketball. Yeah, back to basketball. I'm really waiting to kind of see them put a complete game together because in both games they've had one bad half and one good half. Um, you can't do that against like a South Carolina team, even though South Carolina might not be all that great. I mean, they were predicted to be somewhat competitive in the SEC preseason. They weren't predicted to be like the worst SEC team in the conference. So I want to see kind of where things stand in this basketball team, if they can get up for a South Carolina game on the weekend compared to an Eastern Illinois game right after the football game. Let's see if there's maybe a little bit of difference in effort.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For me, all I'm gonna say is that for me, all I'm gonna say is that this uh football team can win it all.
Okay.
That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say.
I
Uh,
respect the opinion.
that's all I'm gonna say. That is all I'm gonna say. It is on the table. The first banner is on the table. But folks, that about wraps it up for our 330th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening to Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers.